cutting brand today is like skipping plant maintenance or something. You know, you save this quarter, but you face a much bigger bill later in a time that you might not want it then as well.
Marketing Architects.
Hello, and welcome to the Marketing Architects, a research-first podcast dedicated to answering your toughest marketing questions. I'm Elena Jasper. I run the marketing team here at Marketing Architects, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Angela Voss, the CEO of Marketing Architects, and Rob DeMars, the Chief Product Architect of Misfits and Machines.
Hello.
Hello.
We're back with our thoughts on some recent marketing news, always trying to root our opinions in data, research, and what drives business results. Today, we're actually answering a listener question that has come up a few times, and it was recently re-asked in our YouTube comments, so we thought, hey, let's dedicate an episode to it. And that question is, how can I implement marketing effectiveness principles when I don't have a huge budget? So even if you are flushed with advertising cash, this episode still might give you some ideas for your marketing strategy this year. I'll kick us off, as I always do, with some research, and I think I found a good article to sort of ground us before we jump into the discussion. It's from Daniel Long for The Australian, and it's titled, Brand and Performance Ads Create Multiplier Effect for Business Growth. Marketers might assume that a small budget limits your ability to grow, but that's not necessarily true. How you spend may matter more than how much. This article talks about the recent work report, the multiplier effect, which makes a case that businesses that silo brand and performance marketing or lean too heavily into performance are leaving growth on the table. So the data shows that when brands overinvest in short-term performance marketing alone, they can cut their ROI by 20 to 50%. But when they shift to a balanced strategy, investing 40 to 60% of their budget into brand while maintaining their performance efforts, ROI jumps by an average of 90% and in some cases doubles. And you don't need a massive budget to achieve this effect. What you do need is a discipline to split your spend wisely, even if it's small, and you should integrate brand building into your plan. It's tempting to go all in on performance when budgets are tight, but the research suggests that even with limited funds, neglecting brand is a costly mistake. All right, so I said earlier that how you spend your marketing dollars often matters more than how much you spend, and that's how we often see brands with massive budgets underperform and small budget brands make big waves. So let's start here. I'm sure we've all seen brands grow effectively on limited budgets. So what's your favorite example and kind of what stood out about their approach?
I'll go first. Ready? You guys got to guess who it is.
All right, do it.
Our blades are effing great.
Dollar Shave Club.
Dollar Shave Club.
Yeah. Michael Dubbin walking past forklifts, employees in bear suits.
Grandpapa had polio or something.
Yeah. Had one blade in polio. Yeah, apparently that one-day shoot cost about $4,500, which is less than some brands spend on craft services at a TV shoot, at a spot shoot. So they dropped this video on YouTube and received 12,000 razor subscriptions in the first 48 hours. And I think the spot had a really clear value prop, and it did three things at once: helped build their instant mental availability, earned them a mountain of free press, and created a repeatable asset. People still quote that line. You guys know it so many years later. And 5 years later, Unilever buys the company for $1 billion in cash. So with a budget smaller than most brands' coffee fund, maybe, they proved Byron Sharp's point that distinctiveness plus broad reach, even reach that's earned, can bend the growth curve dramatically.
Yeah, that's such a great story. There's so many good stories out there. Like your Liquid Death, they've obviously done a ton of great work. Another one that comes to mind is Cards Against Humanity. We're not a huge games family, but have you guys played Cards Against Humanity? It's been passed around our house quite a bit, and they literally sold bull caca. Can I say that?
I don't know what that was, so sure.
Bullshit. You can bleep me out, I guess. They literally sold that on Black Friday. They earned a ton of viral attention. They've just really leaned against what everyone else has done in their category for very little money. In fact, they were actually crowdfunded, but they used all that to their advantage and are highly memorable as a result.
Yeah, they're a great example. I was thinking about this, and one of my favorites is GoPro. They do a lot of user-generated content. You can see them, they partner with snowboarders. You see these gorgeous shots, and you can always kind of tell when it's a GoPro camera. And Red Bull does something similar. They partner with triathletes and endurance athletes. And you'll see in triathlon sometimes pros will have their helmet just looks like a Red Bull can, not the shape of a can, but it's so brand it out. And you just think about that, seeing that all the time. So I think those brands do a good job of really connecting with people that would already be using their products and then just monetizing that. But let's talk about tactics. I wanted to discuss kind of what does a balanced, effective plan actually look like for someone who has that limited spend. So Ange, say a CMO comes to you and they've got $1 million in an annual media budget. How would you start to think about that mix of brand versus performance?
Yeah, I always go back to the research. So if we think about marketing effectiveness, empirical data shows us one big principle: growth comes from adding new buyers, and you add new buyers by making the brand easy to notice and easy to buy right from day one. And I think this is a big debate as people go like, marketing effectiveness principles are for bigger brands. They're for massive brands. A lot of the research has been done with larger brands. That doesn't necessarily mean that the principles and the effectiveness research doesn't hold true. So if we had $1 million, how do we build mental availability and harvest demand without starving either side? I would break the budget into 3 buckets just to keep it simple. That brand building reach, maybe 55 to 60% of that budget, putting the brand in front of as many category buyers as we can, perhaps using broad channels. You could look at a remnant strategy or not, but I think efficiency is important. CTV, national streaming, audio, network radio, linear TV. I would really hone in on a distinctive asset with all of those impressions that can target these category buyers. Second would be that performance kind of activation budget would be like 30 to 35%. So capturing demand, the brand work stirs up. And the ideal there is that we're mopping up easy wins. So paid search, we all know what the performance side of the world looks like. I don't think you need to go into that. And then are you reserving some dollars for measurement and learning? So proving payback fast, and tune the split each quarter, so to speak. So share of search tracking. You could look at YouTube, meta brand lift studies. There's open source MMM models. So there are some that won't cost you any, but just making sure that if we're going to put dollars out there, we need a way to measure it. So let's reserve a little to ensure we can do that.
So Angie, you mentioned a couple channels there. Are there any specific channels that you think are maybe more forgiving or go further, or the opposite, they're more punishing when you have a limited marketing budget?
Pick channels where each extra dollar buys incremental reach over kind of fancier targeting methods. Streaming audio, host-read podcasts, linear TV, fast TV, AVOD, CTV apps, broad YouTube pre-roll, even classic out of home. They really let you blanket a wide swath of category buyers for single digit to maybe low teen CPMs, depending on the channel that you're looking, with hopefully, if we're doing it smart, kind of minimal creative overhead. I think the money pits are in the precision tools, hyper-targeted programmatic display or CTV. Other areas like A-list influencers, maybe splashy event sponsorships, prime only, network TV, all these carry really high entry fees and deliver far less reach for each dollar. So those are the areas to look out for.
That's a good point. And some channels do have more of an impact on others. So that seems like that's a good way to get your bang for your buck. Like TV kind of rises all boats, so to speak. Well, Ange, you mentioned creative, and that can get really expensive for certain channels, which makes me think about like tools and technology that can help us do things like creative more efficiently. So Rob, wanted to start with you. What are some kind of tools or tech that you like right now that maybe marketers could use to get more out of their marketing investments?
This is the greatest time in history for marketers to not have money. Just full stop. When you think about all of the tools that just it's just the headlines. It's over and over. Everything from your VO to Runway to 11 Labs to ChatGPT, just introducing new models that continue to write even better. It's like the cost is going to zero when it comes to producing amazing assets. And so marketers should really this is preaching to the choir, I know, but marketers should be leaning in as fast and as hard as they can on all of this. And that's not just for the generative tools as it relates to creative. This also relates to strategy, relates to deep research, synthetic audiences in terms of pre-testing. All of these costs are going away, quite honestly. And so, again, there's never been a better time for marketers to have small budgets.
Ange, what do you think? Any like tech you're particularly excited about?
Just open source marketing mix modeling, I think, is a good thing to consider. So Meta's Robin, Google's got Lightweight. that let any analyst with Python spin up a Bayesian MMM and simulate kind of budget reallocations. So that would be one. Another one that shocks me at times is how few folks are looking at share of search within Google Trends is free. Lesbinet's work shows that a rising share of branded queries is a quick proxy for rising share of voice and eventually, hopefully, market share. So all you need is to get into the tool, download that data into a spreadsheet, and get a sense of you versus your competitors, what's going on.
Those are great, especially the MMM, share search. I think too that the use of synthetic audiences is something that you should consider. Like if you're using any traditional market research tools, John Lombardo and Peter Weinberg, they have a new podcast, Lab Grown Marketing, I think it's called. And they were talking today about the complaints about synthetic audiences, like, oh, it can't come up with anything unique. It's like, well, they were saying the point of market research is to get to actually the consensus. Like you wouldn't necessarily want some crazy insight to come out of market research. Like part of the point is to figure out what is the average, like what's the average customer thinking. So I thought that was a great point.
An even deeper point, which kind of blew my mind. I was talking with a friend who has a colleague at a major packaged goods company. They're like, well, how are you studying your audiences today? And they're like, we're actually not even studying the audiences. We're studying how AI is interacting with our product. And because they're realizing AI is going to be determining so many of the buying decisions in the future, and they're trying to better understand how to connect their brand with the AI. So like, geez, that's one level deeper into the matrix.
Yeah, when AI is making your purchase decisions for you, it's like not how do you please the consumer, but how do you please the AI? That's tough to think about. Cool. Well, Rob, what about like specifically creative? How should marketers think about that when their budgets are tight? Because that can become a huge expense depending on the channels you're investing in.
We've all been there and have said, gosh, we just don't have the budget, right? I got this great idea, but we just don't have the budget. And then do you really have the idea? I think you always have to ask yourself that question, even in good times. Right? There is no correlation between cost and creativity. I think that's an invented reality, but it's not reality, right? It's just that the biggest ideas can be a word on a billboard, right? Or it could be an amazingly crafted PR stunt or a brilliant TV commercial that's just brutally simple or complex, but done in a simple manner. Just production value by no means should be a restriction in times of war.
And Ange made a good point earlier too about if you are going to invest in creative, how do you make sure you have clear, distinctive assets so that any investment you are making, anything you're producing, it is delivering the most for your brand and it's recognized. What do we call it, Ange? Like taking full credit of your commercials or any creative that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. When we think about spot length and things like that, like how do you get full credit? If you're going to be on air for 30 seconds, let's not wait until the last couple of seconds to be like, oh, that was for Dollar Shave Club. Right from the very beginning, you're like, we're talking about razor blades.
Right. And Dollar Shave Club was shot for like $4,000, so, right. And then seriously, like it's crazy. And I think the flip side of it now, even with AI, is it's kind of calling out us creative folks. It's like, okay, you said you needed a dragon flying over a castle for this spot to be amazing. Okay, you've got it now. Now, is it an amazing spot or not? Like it's kind of put up or shut up when it comes to how big is your idea really?
Yeah, and getting full credit too. I know we always talk about it in terms of TV, but it counts for anything. How hard is it to recognize a brand sometimes from digital ads and just getting full credit of anything that you do? Makes a lot of sense. Let's just be honest here. Sometimes the hardest part of investing in marketing is actually convincing internal stakeholders, convincing them that advertising is worth it, especially when you're in these times when budgets are tight. So, Ange, what advice do we have for when you're convincing a stakeholder, maybe like a CFO, that investing in brand is a worthy both like short-term and long-term investment?
Well, I think first, are we leading with gut or is there something that we can point to in terms of effectiveness? So something like Work's multiplier effect study, brands that rebalance from performance only to an integrated mix lift overall ROI by a median of 90%, while overfunding pure performance cuts returns by 20 to 50%. So our dollar works almost twice as hard when part of it builds demand before we harvest it. Something like that is backed by data, I think is helpful for a CFO. They're smart folks. They keep us in line. So are we able to show a payback window that the P&L can feel? So share of search, moves within weeks and has been shown to predict market share about 6 months ahead. Can we say, well, watch this weekly? If it's flat, after 60 days, we reallocate. Just not going in, leading that CFO to believe we have to burn a couple million before we recognize what's going on. And then I think too, quantifying the cost of inaction. IPA data on excess share of voice shows that every 10-point deficit in share of voice eventually erodes half a point of share. So cutting brand today is like skipping plant maintenance or something. You know, you save this quarter, but you face a much bigger bill later in a time, you know, that you might not want it then as well.
I saw some cool LinkedIn data the other day about cutting brand spend and like the immediate impact it has, but also the longer you cut it, the longer it takes to build back to where you were too. It's not like you can just turn it back on and all those positive effects we were seeing come back to baseline. It's like sometimes it can take 9, 11 months, a year for you to get back to those impacts you were feeling when you were always on. And even if you cut for like a month, it's going to take longer to build back.
Yep.
Which I thought was interesting. Well, speaking of proving how these things are working, you mentioned like share of search earlier, MMM. What are some other metrics that we recommend marketers track if they want to prove the value of their spend, even at like lower level? Oh my goodness, even at lower levels.
I knew what you were saying. Beyond some of what I've already mentioned, branded search volume and CPC, the more people searching your own name and lower CPCs to win them shows brand demand is making performance cheaper. Obviously, we should be looking at direct to site visits. Incremental sales lift from geo uplift studies have been interesting. Just hard currency proof comparing units, revenue, margins in exposed versus holdout markets. There's a lot. I mean, I think attention adjusted CPM is something that we can look at. Ensures you're paying for eyeballs that are actually on the screen, not just impressions. So there are a lot of ways to get access to full funnel thinking related to measurements without having to put a lot of dollars out there.
I thought one fun question we could talk about is there a mistake, just one that we see marketers making again and again when it comes to trying to do more with less budget? And you're talking a lot, but we'll start with
I know.
Sorry. Poor Ange.
I mean, mine is the obvious one. I think you probably are going to both be like, you took mine. It's hyper targeting. To squeeze short-term efficiency is what they think. You know, when budgets tighten, marketers instinctively slice their audiences even finer. Let's only hit the core of the core, believing that fewer wasted impressions is kind of a thrifting way to work. But in practice, it does the opposite. Every extra filter can potentially inflate CPM depending on how you're doing it, caps the reach to those same heavy buyers and blocks the theoretical 95% of category shoppers who will buy later that aren't on your list today.
Yeah, I would say the idea of regressing to the least expensive channels, it's an obvious temptation to be able to show that spreadsheet to the CFO and go, look at the money saved, but are you doing that at the obvious detriment of the effectiveness?
Rob, mine is kind of connected to that because I was thinking when marketers cut, they typically go towards performance channels, which can make sense. However, when you're doing that, you're typically taking away channels like video, out of home, ones where you can really display your brand, stand out. And I think when you get stuck in those bottom of the funnel channels, you can sometimes disappear into the sea of sameness, where now you're just competing maybe in paid search, competing on Facebook. And I also think that same sea of sameness, I would say that's all the same mistake too. Marketing teams can become risk averse and stand out less, try less new ideas. We talked about the importance of your distinctive assets, especially when you have a limited budget. So you wouldn't want to be forced into just doing what everybody else is doing, disappearing. All right. If we had to cut something, let's say you have to, you've got a plan, it's already lean, but you want to try to maintain effectiveness. What would we cut? And then what would we protect at all costs?
We tend to see that brands sometimes overinvest in retargeting. A lot of the sales visits that you end up driving there would have happened anyway. So I'm just going to call it nth round retargeting. It doesn't mean that no retargeting is the advice, but after a couple of touches, we tend to see the return falls off a cliff. So that would probably be the one that I would cut after once or twice. What I would keep, I don't know. I mean, I've already talked about distinctive assets. I guess another that I would keep is any Any internal cost or external marketing that you have focused on new buyer penetration view. So whether that's in your CRM, your panel data, whatever it might be, growth lives in that first time buyer, light buyer, influencer buyer. So drop that lens, and I just get worried about optimizing to the heavy users too great of a percent degree.
I am going to go with my gut on this one. I have no data to support this, which I know is your favorite thing to hear, Elena, but I just think there's a lot of dumb money being thrown at influencer campaigns. And you just go like, I'm super happy for the influencer. It sounds amazing, but
Great for them. Yeah,
absolutely. But is that dollars well spent? And I don't think we have that kind of cushion to be able to be doing those kinds of experiments. In terms of what to protect at all costs, I guess I'll just go back to the marketing budget period. I just think it's so easy to just go after marketing in times of recession. And, as we've said earlier in the old quote of stopping your marketing budget to save money is like stopping your watch to save time. And I always like that one. And it's so easy to go after what seems like a squishy line item, but it is your lifeblood.
No, I think that's great, Rob. And yeah, and one of the thoughts I had was similar to yours, which is any marketing channel that has very high frequency, because we know your first impression is going to be your most efficient. We had Jordan on the podcast last week to talk about this. Your second impression is going to have to work twice as hard as the first. So if you have any channels in general that you have an extremely high frequency within, that might be something important to look at. And then I also thought paid search, things like display. You hear all the time stories, oh, I cut my paid search and my marketing results didn't change. And those could be things to at least test if you're pull and spend.
Absolutely. Those are great ones.
All right. How about this? What is our favorite cost-effective, quote unquote, marketing hack right now?
Okay, I'll go first. You already talked about synthetic research, so I won't talk about that one, but what we call synthetic control CTV testing. And I think there's a lot of different names for this, so I'll just describe it a little bit. Similar to a classic geolift test, where you black out ads in certain markets and expose other markets, synthetic control CTV testing is that same mentality. So start by ingesting impression logs, sales, macro trends, basically every signal you can grab for the entire country. A machine learning model then builds a statistical doppelganger for each of these either markets, zips, and then a weighted blend of all of the unexposed zips that pre-campaign behaved almost identically to the outcome that you care about. So because the control is synthetic, we've got a situation in which we've got control groups and exposed groups that look very much like each other. And because we're not doing it on a geo basis, on a DMA basis, we can hack the amount of money we can spend against those audiences, either zip based or whatever your statistical model is going to kick out, but allows you to get a really tight, controlled, exposed result on a macro level across your business versus just looking at, immediate visits to a site or something, app downloads, et cetera. It allows you to see, especially for top of funnel marketing, how is that marketing impacting all of your channels in those controlled spaces? So super great way to get a sense of what marketing does in that space.
Synthetic controls are super cool, and so cool that we can use it now for something like TV.
God, that was a smart answer for a marketing hack. Mine's equally as smart. It's poop.
Oh, geez.
No, I talked to you guys earlier about the use of earned media when it came to Cards Against Humanity and the bull poop. And I immediately, when I was thinking of marketing hacks, I also went to the Poopery and the Girls Don't Poop campaign. And I go, there's just something about earned media that when you think about a marketing hack is near and dear to everyone. And maybe it's near and dear to the seventh grader in me, but it is just going, how do we lean into something that can truly garner attention? And you'd think we did earned media at Marketing Architects, given how much I bring it up, but I do love the idea of how do you become famous without spending $1? And again, it forces the creatives to get in a room and go, okay, let's do this. But what are we going to do that's truly going to show results? I think that's maybe the other thing is we're a marketing effectiveness agency. We've always been a marketing effectiveness agency, and earned media is akin to that, right? It is truly measured performance. Nobody goes, that was a great earned media campaign, but it earned $1. No one in the history of marketing would ever say that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's another one of those, put your money where your mouth is, or no money where your mouth is, I guess.
Think bold. Think fame first. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay. So obviously synthetic audiences, I was thinking that one too, but we already mentioned it for consumer research. So one other thing I was thinking was content like a podcast. Podcasts, they do take your time, sometimes your heart and soul, but they are cost effective and could allow you to reach your audience in a different way. I know that a lot of B2B brands do podcasts, but we've also talked about brands like Away. They do travel podcasts, just a way to reach an audience in a new way. And now there's all these different tools for editing your podcast, for releasing it. Could be a fun way to connect with your audience in a different way and reach people that maybe aren't reachable through other channels. All right. To wrap us up here, I have a game. It's called Would You Rather Marketing Budget Showdown Edition. So I'm going to give you a few Would You Rather questions tailored to a CMO making marketing decisions with a limited budget, and you can both pick and defend your choice. Sound good?
Love it.
Okay, first one, number one. Would you rather run $8 million evergreen on TV all year round or spend it all for one Super Bowl airing?
Well, I got my answer.
Well, I mean, yes, I think we have our answer on that one. But you always go first, Ange, so I'll just say it. I'll just say we're both thinking, of course, we'd rather spread our money around all year long on really awesomely cost-effective media intersections and not blow it all in the toilet bowl that is the Super Bowl.
You were really going after the Super Bowl there. Not to say it doesn't ever make sense, but if you're doing it, if you're only doing
money to burn, I'm all money to.
If we're budget strapped, my goodness, this feels like a bad move.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was an easy one. Okay. Number two, would you rather reach 5 million light buyers once with an average ad over 4 weeks, or reach 1 million buyers 5 times with a great ad over 4 weeks?
I'm still trying to understand.
You're still trying to follow what the
Rob's like, I need a piece of paper and a pencil.
I need a diagram. But I'm going to go with A because I normally like cheat and look at the person's paper next to me. So I'm looking at Angela's and she says A and I'm going A. But I get where she's going with that. Yes.
Light buyers, low frequency.
Absolutely.
Wide and broad. Yes.
Okay. Would you rather have perfect brand tracking but no sales data, or perfect sales data and no brand tracking?
Oh my goodness. Perfect brand tracking and no sales data. Well, I'm going to go out of business if I don't have sales data.
I want sales data.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's tough. It'd be tough without that to do anything.
It would be.
In fact.
It would be. Yeah.
Would you rather launch a big campaign once every 2 years with stunning creative and broad reach, or run ongoing, always on creative that's consistent but never quite remarkable?
Oh my goodness.
Wow. Say that one again.
Would you rather launch a big campaign once every 2 years with stunning creative and broad reach, or run ongoing, always on creative that's consistent but never quite remarkable?
Is the stunning creative every 2 years consistent or no? Is it
changing? Are they spending all year round, or it's like tent-poled, like big burst and then you go quiet?
It's a tent pole.
Okay.
Well, I'm going with the other one. I'm going with more consistent.
Yeah. Consistency is super important.
Would you rather be seen as boring but trustworthy, consistent and familiar, or seen as bold and exciting but polarizing and risky?
Oh, polarizing.
Yeah.
For sure.
That's a good one. I mean, am I known?
Yeah.
You know?
I'd rather be anything but boring. Is that what Steve Jobs said?
This is sort of the debate over distinctive versus differentiated. Do we need distinction? It can help, but more we need to be easy to remember, easy to buy.
I think a lot of famous brands might not be considered exciting. Mm-hmm. You know, they're trustworthy, they're consistent, still successful.
It depends upon how big you are in the category too, and how much you need to differentiate yourself.
True. Are you like a late stage brand or a new?
I always like that answer. It depends. How's that?
Makes you right all the time.
Yeah, it's a classic marketer's answer. All right. Would you rather make the case for purpose marketing against Bob Hoffman, or argue in favor of loyalty programs and retention efforts against Byron Sharp?
Oh, gosh. I'd have to go.
Which way do you like to be yelled at?
Yes,
Basically the
exactly.
question.
I think I'd probably go up against Bob Hoffman.
I'd go up against Byron Sharp.
Okay.
And only because I agree with what he's saying, and it was really good for me to, process his perspectives on loyalty marketing. But I do really like my Delta point card. And so I just feel like
honing on that.
I just feel like there's still a little something there.
I do feel like you, Rob, disproportionately love loyalty programs more than the average person.
I like really good ones. And it's not even the value they deliver. It's like an emotional thing. Like I like my Fandango too. I like my Delta.
But you exploit it more as well. Like I don't know if you're the worst customer or the best, but like you have a Mr. Car Wash, and don't you go more than 20 days a month?
I bathe in it myself.
Oh my god!
I get my value. I walk through it. I come in there with my towel and I say, "All right, Mr. Car Wash."
So I don't know if that makes you like their best customer or their worst, because I'm sure they're losing money on you.
As a kid, did you ever like open the window in the car wash? My brother used to do that all the time. He'd like wait for the perfect moment and just be screaming. Okay. For that one, I don't know. I'd be terrified of both of them. So I don't know.
Yes.
I think I'd rather argue against Bob Hoffman than Byron Sharp, to be honest. Okay. This last one is a ChatGPT one that I thought was so funny that ChatGPT came up with this.
Okay.
Would you rather have to rewrite Byron Sharp's How Brands Grow as a children's book, or attend an ayahuasca retreat with Mark Ritson and your brand team?
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
Isn't that crazy?
That is hilarious.
Oh man, probably the retreat. That sounds amazing. That'd be a good time. Although I think the world could use the children's version of How Brands Grow. So
yeah, I guess I would go with that one too. As long as we can make it like a pop-up book version, I think that'd be really fun. But barfing alongside Mark Ritson in the middle of a jungle does not sound like a good time to me.
Yeah, agreed. I think the children's book would be fun. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Isn't that funny? I'm like, man, ChatGPT, I don't know what you're thinking.
It's on a little ayahuasca update.
Yeah. All right. We'll wrap it up.
That's it for this episode of The Marketing Architects. We'd like to thank Taylor De Los Reyes for producing the show. You can connect with us on LinkedIn, and if you like the podcast, please leave us a review. Now go forth and build great marketing.
I'm describing this wrong.
That's okay. I couldn't stop thinking about the word doppelganger after you said it. I love that word. I haven't heard that word in so long. Great. We're thinking of brand names right now, Rob. We should consider that as a brand name.
That's true.
Marketing Architects.